For this month, where we acknowledge International Women's Day, education may be a path towards personal progress. For others, it may be an opportunity to exercise benevolence. In this special episode, we have a conversation with educator and philanthropist Miss Renette Dumont. This is One on One. I'm Mishron Robinson. A special good evening to you, Barbados, and to you, our special guest, Mrs. Renette Dumont. Renette, welcome to the program.
Thank you. And thank you for having me.
You're most welcome. We are in the month where International Women's Day is recognized, and you wear many hats as philanthropist, as psychologist, forensic psychologist, as attorney in training, as lecturer. Which of those hats do you think is making the biggest impact on the next generation of Barbadian women, Renette?
First of all, for International Women's Day, I like the theme, give to gain. And that question is a loaded question, but a very significant one in my view. And I'll answer that from all three perspectives. As a lecturer, I like the idea of educating individuals, improving minds, passing on knowledge. And I think that individuals gain a lot from this as a lecturer presenting on the various topics educationally. Currently, I am lecturing in 2 law courses, and I love the law. Having pursued law, I love imparting the knowledge about the law, and I think that that's a good example. Also, I believe that lecturing can impact on generations to come, and because it is wide and broad-based,
Yes.
then I believe that that's a good area.
How does a community benefit when a woman, an average Barbadian, steps into the realm of becoming an attorney? What does that mean for a community? What does that mean for a family? Tell us about the importance of that.
Well, I think it means a lot because it is a demonstration to other young women that they can step up and pursue the same law and also pursue other areas in education. And believe it or not, although persons somewhat believe that there are other areas that individuals can get involved in terms of progressing, education is still the best vehicle for upward mobility.
Education is still the best
Vehicle
towards wealth creation and that kind of
and
thing.
upward mobility. The upward mobility will come with wealth creation, quality of living, quality of life, and all that is still important in terms of and the education is therefore a vehicle to that progress.
How does that make you feel as a lecturer that this opportunity with young women across Barbados, you're literally holding that in your hands, where their lives as average women in Barbados could change completely and rest with you as a lecturer in terms of education being that vehicle for upward mobility?
Well, it made me feel very proud because I have many degrees. Barbadians know that. I have 9 qualifications, and law being the last one. But I'm not one to boast about it, but I like to tell people about my journey because this will encourage young people to get up and go out there, be educated, and not allow limitations to hold them back. Because I find that sometimes in Barbados, Barbadian people would often discourage young people, and therefore I'm one person that is an example that could encourage young people to pursue their goals and pursue their dreams. And you often hear in Barbados persons talk about there are too many lawyers or that the legal profession is saturated, but lawyers move on, lawyers pass away, and there's room for people. And every person that pursues law does not have to be an attorney in practice because there are other aspects to law. Because right now, I'm lecturing in 2 law courses. So I'm saying that there's room for everybody and that young people got to be encouraged in order to pursue their dreams and so on.
Mm-hmm. Do you think there's any concern for the greater education of women and that being some type of foreshadowing for men?
I don't think it's a foreshadowing for men, but we have to start from the viewpoint that there are more women than men. And because there are more women than men, we still have to find a place where women can shine. And therefore, education is one in professions, we have to find a place where women can shine. And also, we have to find greater positions, more positions for women to shine in parliament and in politics.
How do you feel about the leadership in terms of the opportunities provided for women in parliament, the leadership of our prime minister as well, and the work that she's doing and setting this big example for a lot of women, young attorneys like yourself, well, attorneys in training?
Well, the prime minister has been very strategic in how she positioned Barbados and how she's seen to the world and so on. And I think she's a shining example of where women in Barbados can assess her and therefore try to follow in her footsteps or follow similarly in her footsteps. And I think that's good for Barbados and that's good for positioning and so on. So I think she's doing a good job with regards to that. What I want to see is more women in politics. And because I find that in politics, you still have more is dominated by males. And in some other professions, they're still dominated by males rather than females.
It seems as if when a person practices law, the best next step in the minds of a lot of people is a political life. Do you see that as the case, or do you think there's opportunity to shine outside of a life in politics, considering all that you've just said?
That there's opportunity to shine in a life outside of politics, but one of the reasons that persons that pursue law will gravitate to politics is that lawyers work for themselves. Most lawyers work for themselves, so therefore, say if they're not successful in that area, they can always return to their practice, and therefore, that's one aspect of looking at it. Also, in law, lawyers deal with legislation every day, applying the law every day to the matters and to the issues that they're confronted with. So that's another reason. And in parliament or in the structure of government, it's good to have the legal background because you begin to understand how the laws are enacted and why laws are enacted and what better laws are suited for to govern Barbados.
With that in intersection, with you as an educator and you as an attorney in training as well, what are some of the policies that you would love to see enacted or progressed where education policies are concerned in Barbados? So what was of greatest concern to you?
Well, first of all, I like to see policies are implemented to help females. And therefore, we want to look greater at the domestic law, domestic violence. And though we have legislation that was enacted in 2016, I still think that we still need further legislation to help females. I want to see legislation implemented where women can protect their children from child sexual abusers. And I want to see crisis centers implemented around Barbados so that if there's any form of sexual abuse going on within the home or any other form of abuse, that those parents will be able to remove their children from the household and house them in centers until other implementations are done or other interventions.
Who do you think is to blame regarding the widespread cases of child sexual abuse and molestation in Barbados?
Well, first of all, the perpetrators of child sexual abuse, there are pedophiles, and therefore pedophiles is a form of a sickness, and it does not go away on its own. So it's up to the state now to protect children from that form of abuse, right? So the state now have to play a greater role in protecting children.
In utilizing your background in forensic psychology as well, how do you think that would come to play in elements such as this?
That we can do it by policy, implementation of different various policies, or we can do it by legislation, right? So right now in Barbados, and another thing is that I called for many times. Actually, when I returned to Barbados since 2005, I've been calling for active registration of child sexual abusers, and that hasn't been done as yet, but other agencies in Barbados also have been calling for that, so we're yet to see that. But one politician argued, this is many years ago, that she would not like to see that in Barbados because Barbados is too small, and therefore she was looking at it from the perspective of persons will point fingers at the person, and also persons can accuse of a person of sexually abusing, and that might not be the case. But when we look at pedophiles, we're looking at a pattern of behavior over time. And just one incident can determine that it must be a pattern over time. And therefore, if we examine the pattern over time, then we have justifiable cause to label that person as a child sexual abuser or a pedophile or an offender sexually. And therefore, we can have registration for those people so that parents can invariably protect their environment and remove the children from that environment.
In considering all that you said, in naming and blaming pedophiles and having them listed, what about the psychology of that makes complete sense in terms of having these perpetrators brought before the courts?
But it makes complete sense because we're going to look at the best interests of the child or the children. And that we're saying that if we register sex offenders, we allow parents then to have a better control of the environment that they would hold children in. So, for example, in Barbados, persons are charged with rape or they abuse children but return to the home. And don't forget, we also still live in a Kadir society where a mother might often say that, okay, but you have to have somewhere to live and so on. So if we bring that person back to the home, the person is going to interfere with the child. So, for example, there are pedophiles who would become teachers. And you know why? Because they're looking for the environment that they can gain easy access to the children. So things like that. And we're not fooling ourselves. It happens in Barbados. And we know it's happening. And the reason being is that persons are consumed with sex. So it's going to happen. So the pedophile now, on the other hand, is also very aware of his environment. And he or she is aware that children are meddling within that environment. So they're going to operate the suit. So this is why we have to protect the children from this kind of offending.
On that whole topic of people being consumed by quote unquote sex, how can we change that behavior? How can we change those dark or cloudy elements of our culture?
Only for the pedophiles. If Barbarians are consumed by sex, that's fine. It's healthy. They can have it all they want. But we just want to make sure that they're not that children are
well
not
protected.
being protected, and pedophiles are not using children to have their sexual needs met.
In another
That's the
vein,
part that's abnormal.
Yes. In another vein, what do you think is the most urgent policy change that we need to see in Barbados?
I would say more than one policy change. We want a more stringent implementation when it comes to domestic violence. That's still a big problem in Barbados. And that and the child sexual abuse legislation, that and sexual harassment within the workplace, still a very big problem in Barbados.
How can we go about to protect our women within workspaces as well? You mentioned policy, but is there anything that work houses can do within corporate Barbados to protect our women?
Programs, sexual crisis centers, where women can go to, hotlines. I think a hotline is great, and I've talked about the hotline before. I've seen government implement it, and that's good. The hotlines are good, and why the hotlines are good is because, Barbadians or people in general, they like to talk about their issue, but they might not want to discuss it with a family member, or they might not want to discuss it with a friend or a familiar person. They rather pick up the phone and call somebody that they do not know, and which is good because it is privacy, and therefore they're able to disclose without any fear of the information getting back, or without feeling pressure into disclosing. So a hotline is very good. I know that because I used to be a HIV/AIDS hotline advisor, and persons used to call in with all kind of new things they try in sex, and then they were calling in, and it was good for that. So our hotlines are good.
There's something about getting things off of the chest as well, and you would understand that coming from the aspect of being a psychologist. But how do you balance that adversarial nature where law is concerned with the empathy needed for psychology? It's a wonderful blend.
It is a wonderful blend, and that's why they have psychology and the law. This course is not taught here in Barbados, but this is taught in the US. Psychology law, where we in the balance, the law and the psychology, and we bring them two disciplines together. With regards to everything happens psychologically,
Yes.
whether people like it or not. It must go through your mind first, whether it is in a positive way or whether it is in a negative way. In terms of justice, it is the whole idea of seeking justice for individuals, representation and justice at the end of the day. Because someone might do a wrong to someone and the person wants justice for it, right? If a wrong is done, it will play on the person's mind psychologically, right? Because things affect people psychologically. And therefore, that person might want to discuss that particular thing that happened to them. Person might seek a lawyer if it happened to them, because at the end of the day, the lawyer represents the client, right? And if the lawyer see that there's an injustice, and this is where we talk about human rights, because everyone is entitled to human rights, and that is entrenched in our constitution, right? Human rights is entrenched in our constitution. And if there's an injustice, an individual has a right to seek legal representation if they feel that their rights have been violated in some way or the other.
Renette, we're going to pause for a short commercial break, but when we come back, I want to talk about the two charities you're responsible for, the Renette Dumont Foundation and the Giving Beyond Limits charitable organization as well.
Absolutely.
We're going to pause for a short commercial break, but we'll be right back with more one-on-one. Please stay with us.
Hi everyone, I'm Dr. Danielle Reed Melillo and I'm a general physician. Today we're going to have a casual talk about HIV and AIDS. HIV is human immunodeficiency virus and AIDS is acquired immunodeficiency syndrome. When HIV is left untreated, it becomes AIDS. HIV is spread locally, mainly by sexual contact, but can also be spread by vertical transmission, which is from mother to child if untreated. The virus attacks the body's white blood cells, which makes it easier to catch infections that a person with a normal immune system would usually fight off. The virus is contracted by contact with infected bodily fluids, such as blood, semen, vaginal or rectal fluids, or breast milk from an infected person. It is not spread by hugs, sharing food, swimming pools, or toilet seats. There is PrEP and PEP available. PrEP is pre-exposure prophylaxis, and PEP is post-exposure prophylaxis. And these are pills that can be used for prevention in certain instances. HIV is treated with antiretroviral drugs, which makes you undetectable and stops the spread. So please, use protection, stop the stigma, and get tested today.
Every child's future begins at home, and every parent at some point needs support. For over 50 years, Paradise has been helping families in Barbados build stronger, healthier relationships, one parent, one child, one conversation at a time. Through parenting workshops, early childhood programs, and community outreach, Paradise equips parents and caregivers with practical tools, guidance, and encouragement. Our work strengthens families, supports positive child development, and helps create safer, stronger, nurturing homes. When parents grow in confidence, children thrive. When families are supported, communities become stronger. Whether you're raising a toddler, guiding a teen, or caring for a child in your extended family, you are not alone. Reach out, learn, connect, because better, positive parenting builds brighter futures. Paradise, building stronger communities, one family at a time.
Welcome back to this edition of One on One. We promised you, our viewers, some conversation regarding Renette Dumont and her charity. Renette, tell us about the charitable organizations you're involved with.
Yes. Well, two charities I'm involved with. One is Giving Beyond Limits and SOAR, and the Renette Dumont Foundation. And I've done a lot of work with these two charities. I love charity work. I love giving, and hence I love the theme again for this year's International Women's Day, Give to Gain. But with respect to how this is positioned, is not gaining for self, but gain to help others, gain to pass on knowledge, gain to uplift others, gain to help put food on people's table. And I love doing that.
What do you think this benevolence and success as a leader, success as an attorney goes hand in hand? When people see that and the fact that you're being selfless with your time and your resources, what do you think that benevolence, sheds good light on a person or on a professional?
Well, I think it sheds good light from more than one perspective. Because for one thing, I'm able to give back, and this is good. This is part of my civic duty, and I love doing that. Persons observe me working within the community, and I find that from that, I was able to receive a lot of sponsorship and this help, and I must be able to call out the Sandy Lane Charitable Trust. They've been backing me for a while, and I am very grateful for that. And other organizations around Barbados, Chefette Restaurant, another great organization, and they're well positioned in Barbados to help. They do a lot of charity work as well. And I think that from doing that, persons are able to observe it and help others, because you have to help people. And I think that the idea of helping, to me, is innate. And I'm born to give. I'm a giver. And I found around the pandemic, I was out there helping all the time, helping persons with food hampers and so on. And I got a lot of sponsorship for that. And that's what I did. And I was very grateful to do that. I often assess the Queen Elizabeth Hospital, and we were providing breakfast for the staff at the Queen Elizabeth Hospital throughout the pandemic and the other hospitals and so on, because I think that they were doing a good job in terms of trying to keep the infection to a minimum, and therefore they needed help with that. So we supplied the breakfast for the QEH and other hospitals and so on, other healthcare profession.
And while this ongoing benevolence and kindness is so important, I'm sure there would have been persons that gave to you as well. What are some of those characteristics in some of your lecturers when you were being lectured that helped to put you on this particular path? And who were some of those persons?
Well, in law, I had a lecturer called Bob Schaefer. I think she was very dynamic and helping me and so on. And she used to always encourage me. And I like that about her. Then I had another lecturer in law, Dr. Ronnie Yearwood, always very encouraging from the time I was doing law. And I had another lecturer, but he was from Dr. Hallis, but he recently left the University of West Indies. Always very encouraging when I did my Master's of Law in Corporate and Commercial Law.
There's something special when you have a teacher. Some persons would say a teacher doesn't make the difference. A lecturer doesn't make the difference. It depends on the child or on the student. But you're saying that the main characteristic that you found would be the encouragement of these personalities towards you.
It didn't only depend on the student, because in life you must have a role model or role models. Some persons might have more than one, and these persons are placed in your vicinity or in your life to help propel you. My mother, Diana Dumont, she was always a person that always encouraged me, very encouraging and very helpful and so on. But your family is one anchor, and they're anchors, as I said. School is one, church is one, and you can pick persons from those environments that would help you to propel you and to mold you into that person.
And how are you seeking to do this with your students? You know, what keeps you floating above and beyond despite the challenges? You may have had a hard day, but you're still giving of yourself with managing the charities, being a forensic psychologist or having that background, and then also being a student, being a lecturer and being a student, but you're still managing to give of yourself to your students also.
But I find this is an excellent question because I find that I'm able to use my psychology within the classroom. Because don't forget, once students come into a class, you have students coming there from various backgrounds, various different issues, and so on. And different issues can impact on education. So I find that I'm a person that thinks quickly and I can assess people quickly.
Reading the room, being
Right.
yeah,
And it's because
intuitive.
I'm trained in the area of body language and so on and listening and that kind of thing. So I can assess stuff quickly. So if I see issues in classroom, I'll deal with those issues. I'll call the student out, not in front of the other students, but call them out if I see them have challenges and so on. So I find that I'm able to apply the psychology within different environments. And to my mind, that's a good thing.
And Barbados's legal program here at Cave Hill is considered one of excellence compared to the rest of the Caribbean. What do you think about our standards and how we are seen across the rest of the world?
But I think we're still seen as being in a very prominent position as it relates to law and the legal profession. And before, I think it still is now, it was very difficult to pursue law at the University of West Indies Cave Hill campus, and it's still difficult to get into law and pursue it. And I find you have a lot of these students there are, their parents are in a better position, well off. Some of them are legal minds already, some of the parents. Some of them are judges, lawyers, doctors. So it's difficult to get into the faculty of law here in Barbados. But once you get in, I think it is difficult to pursue the law degree, but it's not beyond you. Once you buckle down and do the work, you could get through. But it's a great degree to pursue.
But irrespective of some of these students coming from middle class and well-off families, there's still the opportunity for anybody who has the intellectual capacity to pursue a legal degree.
Absolutely. Yeah. Once they have the required degree or qualifications at CATE, those persons can pursue law and can get into the faculty of law.
And I know we opened this segment about focusing on your charities. We've varied off of that quite a little bit.
Right.
But how do you think having an acute knowledge of the law helps with your charitable work as well?
Well, it helps my charitable work because I am able to apply the law to individuals and able to seek out the things that persons want from a legal perspective. So that helps a lot.
Considering that, Renette, what do you think is the spark that led you from a life within the legal fraternity or the start of being an attorney in training to wanting to start a charitable organization?
I think the charitable work come from wanting to help people first. I think it started from there. Want to help people from within the community. And people always want help. Somebody out there always want help with something. And it sparked from there. And I started to do a lot of charity work in St. James South first. And because of that, I was called to politics from engaging in charity work within St. James South first. And I like doing it. I was also a former Rotarian of Rotary Club of Barbados West. And I used to do work in St. James South through them as well. And therefore, I was called to politics from that time.
So we can expect you within the political arena within the near future, or you wouldn't?
Well, I would love to pursue it again because I love politics as well. I love politics. I love politics. I am all for the Constitution. I was granted the prize for constitutional law, and when I was in the faculty of law, and therefore And politics is an area that I like. I like the idea of representing people, the idea of enacting laws, the idea of having an input on the legislation, and the idea of enacting the laws that will help Barbadians. I'm all for helping Barbadians because I love my great Barbadians.
What are some of the 2026 initiatives that you have in place for both of your charities?
Well, we're going to continue with the giving of the vouchers. We're going to continue with the giving of the hampers because somebody always wants something. Food is expensive. So we're going to continue with the giving of the hampers. We have an initiative called the Community Open Doors, and that's going to help spruce up homes within the community. And therefore, people look forward to that because everybody always wants a helping hand when it comes to having the place look nice and proper. Before, I tried to start the program in Silver Hill or in the constituency of Christchurch West Central because I was there before. But because I wasn't there anymore, then I wasn't able to follow through it there. But I'm going to continue with it because it's to encourage Barbadians to keep around the homes looking neat and tidy. And one of the things I admire about the residents in Silver Hill is that their place, even though it was small, always very tidy and always welcoming. So that's a program that I'm going to continue for sure.
Circling back to the whole conversation of a life in politics and a life in public life, what do you say to the naysayers that are concerned about not seeing some of their political leaders? Of course, there's a lot of negotiation happening on the world stage, a lot of representation needed from our Caribbean politicians as well. But it's a delicate balance having to serve the constituency and then also doing that high-level negotiation, which would take the time from politicians being seen in the constituency for a tremendous length or period of time.
Well, it takes a lot of time to continue within the community, and therefore constituents, they love to see the representative within the community. And I know this for a fact from going into the community and being present regularly. And but it is...
Is there a way to balance that?
Right, it is a area that has to be planned, that a politician will have to plan when they're going to go into the constituency and when they're going to be seen, because you have to go into the constituency, be seen in the constituency, and you also have to do for people. You have to represent the people. And often you will hear that politicians only come around when it's time for voting. I don't know if that is true for some people. Maybe it is, if persons are assessing that and saying that. But I did a lot of work in my constituency then, and therefore I think it calls for the politician to plan his work life around the constituency and therefore be present and begin to represent persons within the constituency.
And you've made the comment that you would love to see more women within the political arena.
Absolutely.
But don't we have a sufficient amount of female politicians currently?
Yeah, but we have more males than females. We still need more women to come to the position of leadership within the political arena. I think we still need more women to do that.
And in your work with the young lawyers here at the University of the West Indies, is there an encouragement generally for some of those student lawyers to get involved in political life?
That is not really pushed within the faculty for them to get involved, but I find that lawyers gravitate to politics.
Yes.
Right, but that is not pushed within the faculty, but lawyers do gravitate to politics.
What are some of the major challenges that you're seeing with some of the newer, you may have some Gen Z lawyers or some millennials as well, but what do you say are some of the major challenges among student lawyers right now?
But I think one of the things is I find people need to be more giving and caring. I see it from that perspective. And you need to help each other.
The concern of selfishness.
Within the legal profession, I think people need to help each other. And because everybody cannot do all the work on their own, they still need help. So I think you need to help each other and you need to share the workload.
You're talking about help in terms of academics.
Academics, yeah. Because don't forget, it starts from being the student. Because if a student is selfish with work and so on, not passing on work, not helping their own colleagues, but they will take that same attitude to the legal profession once you get there. But I'm all for helping each other. You have to help each other.
Renette, we're going to pause for another short commercial break. And it's interesting that you made that point about the need for generosity and benevolence within the legal profession. And when we come back, I think it would be good for us to touch on the future of legal education, even here in Barbados, for you as a lecturer.
Absolutely.
We'll be right back with more of this one-on-one with educator, lecturer, philanthropist, Miss Renette Dumont. Please stay with us.
Hi, my name is Barbara Daniel Goddard. I'm the Chair and Councillor of Advocates Against Domestic Abuse, and we are known as ADA. ADA is a registered charity, number 1397. ADA provides support to women and men who are victims or survivors of domestic abuse and violence. Annually, ADA gets involved with a number of events: 16 days of activism, International Women's Day, and Domestic Awareness Month. ADA is always looking for volunteers, and some of the skills that we would like would be persons with fundraising knowledge, marketing, and legal. Visit our website, ada.bb, and you can find all of our social media handles. You can contact us via our helpline if you are a victim or a survivor of domestic violence or abuse.
Hi everyone, I'm Dr. Danielle Reed Melillo and I'm a general physician. Today we're going to have a casual talk about syphilis. Syphilis is a curable infection spread by oral, vaginal, anal sex, and contact with infected lesions. Syphilis has 4 stages: primary, secondary, latent, and tertiary. The disease progresses to each stage until treated. The primary stage causes a painless chancre lesion. The secondary stage causes a generalized rash, which is non-itchy and mainly concentrated in the hands and the soles of the feet. The latent stage can last for years if left untreated, and the tertiary stage can cause dementia and other major organ damage. All damage caused is permanent, so use protection and get tested today.
If you have a disagreement, violence don't make no sense. Don't let pride get in the way. Live to see another day. If you have a disagreement, violence don't make no sense. Don't let pride get in the way. Live to see another day.
Step back, jar this. You ain't gonna finish what I'm starting. Right. Every time a gun busts off is another you gone. The future's like a hard luck. This we island, we can't keep it silent. We sick and tired of the violence, and they got the people fighting. Nearly every headline you will find some. Another you gone in a brutal one. Life in jail or funeral. Use your head and shed for street cred. Cause you get disrespect, don't mean you gotta use a gun. Districts, families offset. In the end, everybody lost in. More life, let me left out the guns. More love, more peace. That's a better target.
If you have a disagreement, violence don't make no sense. Don't let pride get in the way. Live to see another day. This message is brought to you by the Criminal Justice Research and Planning Unit.
Welcome back to this edition of One-on-One. Renette, we promised our viewers to look at the future of legal education here in Barbados and across the region as well. How are you seeking to adapt the Cave Hill curriculum to prepare students for, let's say, AI-driven research or digital-based research here in the island?
Yeah, that's a very good question. And we know that AI is an area now that students tend to go to. But what we find is that students would go on the AI platform and use the material as their own, right? And CAFL, there then were able to implement rules and regulations. Whereas if students go onto AI and they use the material from AI, they're supposed to cite where they got that information from. Now, AI, in my view, is a very good tool, and is a good tool for students to brainstorm. So for example, here within the university, and this is for sure as a law student back then, I find that lecturers, to me, were not as given in terms of facilitating this kind of understanding to students, right? And therefore, which is quite different from the US, lecturers will come and they will lecture, and then you as a student supposed to understand this material. So say if a student does not understand that material, then the student then won't have anywhere to turn. And this is why I believe that the AI is a great tool for students to help them brainstorm, to help them assess the information, to help them to look at it from a different perspective. And then the students then can come back now with their ideas, not to copy from AI, but to have that as a basis to understanding the law. And I find that that is good from that perspective, because I find when I was a student, you will find students some students will go to the bathroom and cry because they couldn't understand what this law was about. And because law is such an elitist profession, they might not want to ask a question. And this is where I have to go back to the US. I've studied there for 5 years. And I love my time in the US when I studied there. They have a structure so great that if a student does not understand, they have a resource center and they have a teacher which is independent of the lecturer. And you can book an appointment with that teacher for every single subject that is being taught in university. And this is why you will find that students thrive better. It's not that US education is easier. It is the structure and the system that is put in place to help students succeed.
Having the resources for the student body.
Absolutely.
How can we implement that in Barbados? Yes, it's considered an elitist profession, but having those social networks, the social resources, the social capital for students is critical and important. And oftentimes we may find that we're losing out on a subset of students who may just not be getting it, but you're saying thank God for the AI, and you're hoping as well for us to have those resources in place for students that may feel as if the system is failing them because there are barriers in terms of social capital.
Right. And also, I find that University of West Indies, they've started to do that. They have a writing clinic because they've recognized that some students were deficient in writing, right? And expression. And writing and expression is important, very important as a lawyer. And therefore, this is not unique to persons pursuing law at Cayfield, but for the entire university. And if students struggle in that area, they can book an appointment and they can attend the writing center and therefore get the help in expression and how to write effectively. Now, writing is a skill, right? So even if a person obtains 6 or 9 A levels or levels, that don't mean that they can write effectively, because writing is a skill that takes time. And therefore, the university has put this in place in order to help students, because at the end of the day, you must be able to help students succeed. And expression is one great area that students lack in.
You don't find that the AI subtracts from critical thinking skills among students?
No, not necessarily.
I know you mentioned brainstorming, but no concerns regarding how that subtracts from students practicing or stretching their intellectual capacities.
But students can stretch their intellectual capacity by reading, because reading is key. And if students read widely, they're able to can critical think from the reading, right? And all that comes with experience.
There was a BBC documentary done earlier this year that looked at the use of students having people write essays on their behalf. Students who would be paying money and expanding resources to have persons write essays for them, to do the homework for them. Have you had any issues with that whatsoever?
No, I haven't had any issues with that, but I've had issues with persons copying information. And this is when I used to lecture in forensic psychology, copying information directly from the internet and presenting it as their own. Now, that is academic dishonesty, and that is wrong. And that we don't want to encourage students to do that, but to encourage students to read and glean from their understanding what they think the author is saying, and then be able to assess it to what they're trying to say. They can do that. And therefore, this is why reading is very important. Reading is critical, and students must be encouraged to read. So, and this is why the AI, I believe, can be used for brainstorming, and therefore, there's a threshold as to the percentage or as to the bar as to how much students can use in terms of AI in order to present their paper. But the rest is left to them for them to read and come up with their understanding of how they would present a paper.
Have you had any concerns generally? You've mentioned the brainstorming for the AI and students copying and pasting work from the internet. But what about shortened attention spans as we've been hearing? Is that a farce? Is that a farcical? Any concerns regarding shortened attention spans from students and their ability to read, to understand, to be intellectual? Some people are saying that there's no issue with attention spans, but we've been hearing it a lot within the TikTok space, within the Instagram space. But I feel almost as if persons tend to engage with content or with books that they're passionate about generally. But you've had any concerns?
But there's some issues with attention spans. But don't forget that there are multiple intelligences.
Yes.
And students learn differently, right? And therefore, in terms of attention span, you always find that some persons can sit there and read a book for 3 and 4 hours, some 5, some 1 hour. So that's an issue with attention span. And because students learn differently, this is why you have to assess them differently. Some students are good at writing, some might be good at expression, some not good at expression, some good at writing, some good at regurgitating words, others good at analysis.
And then
which is the law, which is called for analysis and not rote learning, not regurgitation of word, but analysis.
The critical thinking skills to apply to cases and clients and that type of thing. Absolutely. Is a traditional law degree still enough, or is there a greater encouragement for students to be activists and to be entrepreneurs and to be involved in?
But it depends on what the student or what that person wants to gravitate towards. Cause a law degree might be might be good enough for one individual, but might not be for another. Like because don't forget that persons self-actualize according to what they're going to be at. One self-actualized for one person might not be a self-actualized for another person. This is where we look at the Maslow hierarchy of needs, right? In my view, I'm always looking to do the next thing. And I like that because I'm exposed to other areas and I'm able to pull all those areas together. Somebody might not be seeing it from that perspective because persons view things differently.
In a previous episode of One-on-One with our former Minister of Training and Tertiary Education, Sandra Husbands, she was talking about the future of Barbadian entrepreneurship, the future of jobs within the island, and the need for training digitally, the need for training in AI, the need for training in terms of upskilling and micro-skilling as well. What does that advice look like coming from Cave Hill's law faculty towards law students? I know I asked about, is a law degree alone enough? But what does that look like as we look at the future of law and the need for multiple capacities or a multi-dimensional student?
Well, first of all, a lawyer is an entrepreneur in its own right. And I think once persons get into law, from pursuing the law itself, persons must understand that is entrepreneurial work in the first place, because a lawyer works for him or herself. But they have some areas in law where persons work for a company, right? A firm, and for a bank and so on. They can do advocacy work or work for United Nations and so on. So law in itself is entrepreneurial.
And entrepreneurial comes with its own set of pressures. Law comes with its own set of pressures.
Absolutely.
So how do you manage, quote unquote, the mental health crisis associated with law school for you as a lecturer, even for you as a student, Renette?
Right. So obviously you have to take breaks. And you have to not be in a space where it's very competitive, because law is very competitive. And sometimes you need to step away from spaces where they're not competitive and where you're not seeing the people of like minds, and take a break and go to the beach and do something that is totally different. But law in itself is competitive, right? And the employment of law in itself is also competitive. And working in law, anything in law is competitive. And I think that you have to know this from going in. Not everybody knows it. I remember during the program, they had officials from Woodin Law School came to university, came to the Faculty of Law, and they were explaining to students to look at the whole concept of law and so on, look at the profession and determine whether they wanted to pursue law any further, whether they want to come to the Woodin Law School to become a practicing attorney and so on. And one of the things they said, and this stuck out, that it is very tough and that some students suffer from mental health issues once they get to Woodin Law School. Right. So it can be very tough pursuing the law, and it calls for a lot of work, a lot of sleepless nights, and it's very time consuming. And you would have heard from time to time, the law is a jealous mistress.
It takes a lot of
because it takes up a lot of your time.
Yeah.
It takes up a lot of your time.
What?
I remember one time when
Yeah,
I had, exam was approaching, it was a test, and I wanted to go to the Gold Cup. And I was telling this, another lecturer that I wanted, this is Nyla Robinson, always very encouraging to students. She's another one, I forgot her. She's another one that's always very, very encouraging to students as well. She was to me for sure. And I said, well, I have this exam coming up on Tuesday, but I also want to go to the Gold Cup. And she said,
why can't you do both?
There will be many Gold Cups.
Yeah, oh.
Go and do your work.
So you went to the Gold Cup or you didn't go?
No, I didn't go.
After
a while, I did the work. I didn't go to the Gold Cup.
What is one aspect of law that can't be taught in a text, but only through experience, Renette?
But every aspect of law is taught in the textbook,
yeah,
right? But if you're talking about behavior now, that is different, right? Because behavior has to be seen and observed. But every aspect of law is taught in the textbook.
Mm-hmm. If you could,
because it's not only textbook; it is the Constitution. It's the Constitution that has all the rights and the freedoms of individuals. But if you can tell me that everything can be legislated in law, that I can appreciate. But every law, if you're talking about the law itself, black letter law, hardcore law, all that is either in the textbook or in the Constitution.
I guess the greater question would have been, what can student lawyers learn from experience that isn't necessarily taught in a textbook? What experiences should they have that would help them to be better legal scholars, better legal entrepreneurs, that kind of thing?
Okay. Well, one they could do is to listen to people, listen to the concerns and so on, listen to the concerns of lawyers, listen to the concern of individuals, and that will help glean their position better.
Do you think there's any aspect of Caribbean legal education that should be revisited to make law more inclusive?
Yes, we can revisit. Well, we enact laws, and laws are enacted according to the behavior of persons within the society. So some laws you won't know to enact unless you see the behavior being displayed, and therefore we wait on persons to engage in certain behaviors and then we enact a law. So, for example, we then all had computers and devices and so on, but then we find that persons would take pictures of persons, private pictures, and then blast them on the internet. Now that's against a person's human rights, right? So then we had to put laws in place to discourage that behavior. Because don't forget that the law is also about, especially if you look at the criminal law, is about punishment also, is about deterrence, because you want to deter a person. So we got to look at two things, morality and the law, and how behaviors will impact on individuals.
Well, Renette, it was a pleasure having this conversation with you in the month where International Women's Day falls. There's tremendous work that you've been doing at KPhil as a
Absolutely.
legal educator and also as a student as well, a philanthropist, and of course also a forensic psychologist. Thank you for joining us on this edition of One on One.
Yes, KPhil and Global Campus as well.
Well, there you go. We've come to the end of this special one-on-one with our guest, Miss Renette Dumont. On behalf of my producer, I'm Mishran Robinson. Until next time.